Hey, welcome, Fernando, to episode 3 of the Unblocking podcast. This is a show where basically I ask people what they're going through, what they're stuck on in their careers, and we see if we can make progress in, 40 minutes to an hour. Um, what are you thinking about today?
Thank you for having me, Andrew. Um, I guess on my mind, so about me, I'm a PhD student at UT Austin. I work with machine learning, robotics, all that jazz. And um, I've been at I just finished my third year, and I guess I'm at a point where like I'm starting to think, okay, what's gonna happen after? And I feel like I'm a little stuck, like thinking whether, this particular flavor of work is like exactly the best way to use all my abilities. Um, I think like I like being around people. I think I'm good with people, and this doesn't really optimize for that. But at the same time, I really like the technical stuff, right? I really like spending time on these hard problems. Um, so that's
Okay.
one thing. Yeah.
So you're not sure if you found the right line of work, but
Yeah.
you said that's just one thing. What's the next thing?
Well, when I go down this like thought process, I end up like I feel like in this like explore versus exploit like situation where it's like, okay, should I explore like more like things? I live in Austin and there's like a bunch of events here, like a bunch of really technical stuff, but also just like entrepreneurial like events. And I'm like, should I be talking to more of these people, or should I just, hunker down and get good at this one thing, and then the people will show up? And that's always like on my mind. I'm always like thinking like, should I be exploring more? Should I be exploiting more? Um, so that's the other
So
thing.
there's basically some idea also of like how do I figure out what I'm supposed to be doing in life and then actually stick to it and do it, and when should I when should I quit searching and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm really good at I don't have problems working really hard, right? Like the problem is not to whether I can sit down and like work on something for hundreds of hours. It's more of like sometimes I'm a little too stubborn on that. And that's something I'm trying to learn how to do better, right? Like, hey, this isn't actually the right thing to work on, right?
Yeah, okay. Let's just start. I'm gonna start asking you some questions just so that I can get as much context as possible, and we can
Okay.
kind of unpack things as we go. Keep in mind, anything I say is just often intended maybe to get a reaction out of you, so that I can uh, learn more. You don't necessarily need to take anything I'm saying as like wise or correct,
Okay.
and you are free to argue um, for your point or whatever. But first question I have. Okay, so you have this job. You really like the technical aspects, is what you're saying. Like, tell me more about what you value from your work and what you don't value specifically,
Mhm.
as much detail as you can on the stuff that you like really value and the stuff that you like really don't like.
Yeah. So what I really value is the fact that as a research assistant, like my job is to sit down and just, catch up on the latest research on, let's say, robotics and machine learning. And that just feels like I feel really privileged to do that. Like I get paid to do that, and then think of new ideas, new ways of applying it. That's one of my favorite parts. The fact that I have to learn so much to get going on any of this is also super cool. Like, oh, my job today is just to figure out this new Python library or to, code up something myself, right? That's awesome. Um,
There's like novelty there that you like.
yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Um, I also really enjoy the flexibility, of course, because I can really just set my hours as long as I get the work done. Um, that's something I really enjoy. I'm also around some really cool people, just smart people in general. Like at the thing they do at like these really technical topics. That's cool. Um,
And remind me again, like your specific work. So, like, what is your work building toward? What's the direction of research?
yeah,
I maybe just missed this.
yeah, I didn't really go into it. I do machine learning for robots so that they can adapt to new conditions faster.
Okay.
Um,
So
so
basically, you're helping robots understand their environments and like act in their environments, presumably.
Yeah, and kind of the vision is um, like robots that have maybe these really complex models, like neural nets inside their brains, and these can adapt in real time like a human would to new
Totally.
conditions.
Oh, okay. So you're also doing like real time updating on weights.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, that's cool. Um,
Uh, mhm.
so okay, you're doing that. Do you like the vision? Are you like, yeah, this is like really important. I'm really really happy with this. This is what I value as well, or no?
I do. I do believe a lot in the vision. It's just a hard thing to like even get going. Like these projects take a lot of people
Totally.
and a lot of infrastructure, and sometimes it feels
Is
like
your team the right team? Like, are you gonna get it done?
I think not for like the big vision, but
Mm.
there's because it's a lot of it I feel like I just do by myself.
And
And
like, you're not enough people in your opinion. Like, you can't solve this problem on your own.
well, it's hard. I don't think I can do all of it on my own. I can like
Mm.
start to chip away and like maybe have like an example that I could go like kind of present to like a bigger team, like a research lab, and be like, hey, this is a bite-sized example of what I'd like to, scale up. Um, but I think where I'm currently at, it's just, my team would be maybe other like PhD students, and they're also all balancing their interests. Um, my advisor is great. He's very supportive, but he's also managing a whole lab, right? So,
Right.
um,
So maybe you'd like to be in a more collaborative environment. How many hours a week do you work? And
oof,
like not how many are you in the office, but like how many are you like happily, excitedly working on work?
I'd say like 50. Like,
That's a lot.
yeah,
Are you
it's
happy the whole
it's
time?
I think recently, yeah, like a lot more. Um, just because I've just gotten better at dealing with the uncertainty through my own kind of spiritual practices, like through meditation and stuff like that. So I don't have a bad time, right? I'm not like in the office just like, "Ugh."
But
But
you feel
I
like the lab or the team is blocked in some ways based on like, okay, so you're working 50, but like maybe that work isn't synergistically combining with other people's work, or there's like some collaboration that you imagine happening at these. Where do you imagine the sort of work that you wish you could be doing is happening right now in the world,
mm,
with respect to this lab at least?
um maybe at some of like the like research labs in
Like at
industry, like
Anthropic or OpenAI?
yeah,
Like, you think there are
yeah.
like some teams at Anthropic that they have the sort of work culture that you would like to have?
I think so. Like
Yeah.
this is a very I
Right, right.
work
You're
with
imagining that at least.
yeah. And like I work with some people at DeepMind and like just based on like some of my observations, it seems like it, but it's very noisy observation.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna come back to this at some point, but I just want to get the full story. So you mentioned at the very beginning that you're kind of dreaming of doing other things as well, or like you have some other daydreams of like you're a people person, you want to be talking to people more, that sort of thing. Like what's the work to you? Like what is the work that needs to be done that you wish you could be doing that this is like coming at the cost of because it's like completely separate or something?
Well,
Or if it's not work, if it's something else, then feel free to just tell me what it is.
I just feel like I'm good at really connecting with people, kind of getting a feel for who they are, kind of maybe even what they're blocked on, like how we can all work together better. Like for example,
Right.
I'm mentoring an undergrad and and it's been really cool to kind of know like, hey, this guy seems to get really stuck in this kind of work. And then kind of slowly, walking him through ways of, hey, maybe we could think about things this way, or if this is what we're after, what do you think is the best next step?
Okay. So it's like you have really good mentorship skills. You have like good teaching skills is kind of the thought here.
I think so. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
I could just get people. And I don't really use that. Well, I guess I kind of do
And do
with
you want to
the
integrate that into your work, or do you want to go work on something else, or do you want to like go become a life coach? Is it sort of like, oh, I wish I could somehow combine this all such that I was like an ML researcher who was also a people person who was also on like a world changing team or
okay, so here's what I would wish it would be like. since a lot of the work I do is by myself, I feel like I never use any of these skills
Yep.
for my actual work,
Yep.
and it feels like I'm not like I could use uh like I'm just not using one of my strengths, right? I'm not competing as best as I could, I guess.
So if this student that you were mentoring, like, is there a reason they can't work with you in the lab?
Well, they're just not up to date
Right. So they're not
with
qualified.
the
So like, let's say you found
yeah.
some qualified person. Is there like a budget constraint? Is there a reason that you couldn't just get more people working with you in the lab right now? What are the reasons?
Mhm. I guess I kind of assumed that people are just busy, but I hadn't thought of why they wouldn't be able to work with me. Yeah, I guess my first assumption is like they wouldn't be interested.
Yeah, the work you're doing is pretty interesting to me. I mean, any of my students, like, if you want to fly them out, they'd they'd go do it.
Okay. Um,
I mean, you're probably working on one of the top five most interesting problems in the world right now. It's like actually all the way interesting. Like you're claiming your team isn't at the absolute frontier of it, or like it's not structured quite right, but like you can fix that also. And maybe like you can't fix it this year or next year, but the problem space is properly interesting to almost every engineer who's even considered it. Oh,
okay.
thinking robots. Who wants to work on thinking robots? I bet nobody wants to do that. It's like, dude, literally Anakin Skywalker wanted to do that.
Yeah. I guess I just find myself like the goalposts are always just moving forward. Like every time I get to, because a couple years ago I was nowhere close to like the level of like maybe knowledge and maybe capacity that I have today. Now that I do, I'm like now I'm comparing to myself to all these bigger labs that are doing just really cool shit. And I'm like, fuck, I could do better. I could do better. And
Yeah, I
that
bet
kind
you
of
could.
yeah.
Um, your claim is that the way that you could do better is by having a team. Like, why? What's the instinct there? Or
Well,
like the right people to work with. And it's like it has to do with these people skill things, but like can you kind of flesh that vision out for me? Like what does your day look like once you get to combine these skills that you're really good at with the existing skills that you have?
what would my day look like? Well, I think maybe tighter. Well, first of all, like more collaboration, like more. The biggest project I have right now is like basically just me, like pushing it forward. Like I'm doing all the code, I'm doing all the experiments. I discuss it with other people, but it's more of like higher level. I think what it would look like is more like lower level collaboration where maybe there's multiple people working on the code base on the
Right. So
theory
you
side.
imagine like showing up to the office and talking about the code literally with other
Yeah,
people
yeah,
and
talking
then
about
like
the
splitting
code
up
and
code tasks and unblocking each other on code tasks. Like realistically, if you had the perfect collaborator
Mhm.
who like everything's perfect, you're like deeply in work love with each other, um and
Yeah,
they're a genius, how much
yeah.
faster would the work go, like this project that you think is really big?
I think at least 50%.
At least 50% faster, so like 1.5x based on
Yeah,
having a
at
second person.
least. At least.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the stuff I end up getting stuck on is just like dumb, like it's not even like crazy math. It's just like dumb, like infra stuff that you have to set up to get the robot running, or maybe like it's something software related that's not like novel, you know? And sometimes it just takes like another person to kind of be there at the same like level of like understanding.
Yeah. So you would go 50% faster, and then you also think they would have their own speed. Like they would be working on additional stuff on top of that. So it's like you would get better. Ideally, they would get better, or like, is there a net?
No, they would definitely also get better, right? Like we would both work together.
Okay. So I'm there's a thread here that we can like pull on a little bit, but I
Hmm.
want to make sure to zoom back out just a bit. Like I don't know you very well, and we're just
Hmm.
talking, so I don't want to get caught up in too much in the weeds. So what we've kind of stumbled on is something like you have very interesting work that you like. We talked a little bit about explore versus exploit stuff, and we haven't gotten into that, so we'll get to that in a second. But also, you have people skills that are being underutilized because you basically work alone. You're like a lone wolf in the lab. Um, you think this is hampering your work. So, in other words, you think that working with great collaborators would make you smarter, you would learn faster, your work would get better. And then there's also more stuff on top of that kind of makes me sound like, or like, to summarize, maybe not imperfectly, is like you're a little bit dissatisfied with the lab itself. You like it and you think it's good, but you're also like looking at some of these bigger labs like DeepMind or Anthropic or OpenAI, and you're thinking like, oh well, maybe my talent would be better used at a big lab like that. And then you're also wondering like, well, how do I even decide where my talent will be better used, and or where I could find this sort of team environment that I want? Are those like roughly the considerations? And then if that is kind of the list of stuff that we're worried about, is there other stuff that is actually affecting all of this and your career progress and kind of where you want to go that isn't in that list of stuff that I should know about?
Mm, other stuff. Let me think.
First of all, is that a decent summary of all the concerns? Is
Yeah,
there anything that we
yeah.
should strike from that?
Well,
Or
just on the dissatisfaction with the lab, like like I want to be clear, like I think all of my colleagues here are great. Like they're all really smart people. My advisor is super supportive.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I think it's so I wouldn't exactly like characterize like this is, you know, I wouldn't say like this is their fault, that I feel this
No,
way,
I don't
right?
think.
Hmm.
To be clear, what has come across to me is something like you're genuinely confused because you feel like you're in one of the best places you could be in, and yet you feel some desire to explore more options. So
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 that's a
it's not
better.
necessarily that I would call it a dissatisfaction as much as it's more like you are very ambitious. Like you're
Hmm.
not easily satisfied. And so you're sort of like, I think this is as good as it can get, but also I have some weird instinct that like maybe it's better at DeepMind, and I think I'm good enough to work there too. And how do I decide if I should stay at my lab and double down, or if I should like explore other options, or if I should make my lab better? Like you're kind of, to me, I sense that you have an intuition that things could get better than they are, even though you also feel happy with how good things are now.
That I think that's a good assessment. Yeah, a
Right.
good way of saying it.
so so the kind of core, and it's not just about you, in other words. It's like you have an assessment that things could get better than they are for you personally, like what is my path as a researcher, but you also have some intuition that things could get better than they are for the work. Like in other words,
Yeah.
for the task. How do we build robots that
Hmm.
learn, and also for like the general feeling of what it is like to be in a team environment where everyone is made better than the sum of their parts or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, by
Yeah.
the way, is totally regular in labs. Like this is overwhelmingly what I hear from people in academic labs is just like, I feel like I'm working with geniuses, but I also feel like we're not working that correctly. And it's because nobody in academia uses project management at all. There just isn't project management. It's like, okay, well,
Oh
yeah, of
man,
course,
yeah.
it's not going to feel like you have good project management if you don't have any good project management. Anyway, but
Yeah.
that's so I don't think that's not a knock on your lab by any means. I think your
Hmm.
lab sounds really cool. Like I said, I think a lot of people would want to work there. But
Hmm.
um okay, so that's the rough domain of concern. And then are there any other concerns, or like, and concern, maybe that's not even the right way to describe it. Like, are there things underlying or adjacent to this that are also blocking kind of your sense of fulfillment, self-actualization, like the sort of becoming of who you
Hmm.
want to be, that we haven't discussed yet?
I guess something that came up when you said that is maybe just like some fear that like um like going all in on these interests kind of like specializes me in a way that I just am scared of doing. Like I just don't know what
Sure,
happens then.
sure.
Because I think most of my life I always kind of kept like my options open, right? And now that I was like, okay, I want to get good at this like robot learning thing, and it closes off some other options that I'm like,
What were the
oh
other
shit.
options that you wanted to do, like become a professional musician, comedian? What are the things?
That's a good question.
Politics?
I don't have any specific in mind, but I can just sense it like in my day-to-day life. Like for example, I used to be um a really serious cyclist, and I was doing a lot of that and doing some crazy like ultra endurance bike races, and I was getting like pretty good at that. And at one point I decided like, okay, I want to do this. Like I can't do as many things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I just focused on just the research. And when I did, like I noticed like, hey, like some of those friends kind of drifted a little away, and then I also noticed that I'm not maybe reading as widely as I used to. It's not that
Mm.
I really I'm just really focused, right? But that kind of yeah, that kind of focus that it feels like this requires is scary because maybe there's a part of me that feels like if I do it, then maybe what if I end up as like some like a hermit?
Sure, I understand what you're saying. How old are you?
I'm 26, almost 27.
Are you married?
No.
Do you want to be? Like, are you
Yeah.
at some point? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you live with your family? Like, is your family nearby?
My mom lives in Austin, so that's nice. But most of my family's in Mexico.
Most of your family's in Mexico. Your mom's in Austin. Do you have a lot of friends in Austin? Like, did you grow up in Austin?
No, I didn't grow up in Austin. I grew up in Mexico City. Then I went
Mm.
to Boulder for undergrad. That's where I did this whole cycling thing. Then I moved to Austin 3 years ago.
And what?
Um,
How many friends who like really get you, and would be
mhm.
there for you if you fell ill or if you had a kid or whatever? Do you have in Austin right now?
I think like at least two.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And how often do you see them? Like once a week, less?
Once a week, I'd say.
Because they live like you drive to see them.
Well, one of them works here, like not in
Nice.
my lab, in another lab.
Yeah.
So like I see
You
him,
see them around
or
campus at least
yeah,
one day.
and another one. I've been trying to get better about like just schedule, like seeing them more often, like actually putting stuff on the calendar. So I see him with pretty regularly.
Yeah. I'd say one way that people solve this problem of like I want to specialize and I want to generalize. It's like you can't. There is a
Hmm.
tension there that you're correctly observing, and I think that um, it's good to recognize that there's something there. It's like really you can't do everything. So we're kind of made better by becoming something with other people. So there's like by aggregating your conception of yourself across your community, you actually can generalize and specialize at the same time. So if I think of myself not as just me, but as like me and my five closest friends who live in walking distance from me, who are also married, and I'm married, and we're all like raising our kids together or whatever, there's like some sense that I I have the careers of all of me and my friends. Like we're all kind of an index fund, or we're all kind of some fund that is investing in a lot of different options together, and so we have a lot of diversification that way. Even though what is best for the whole is that each individual specializes quite uh, intensely, so that
Hmm.
we're not just like all useless or
Hmm.
whatever. Um, so I'd say one kind of place to put your thinking is like, okay, well, is it possible for me to not directly develop a bunch of additional hobbies in order to generalize my interests that are going to take a lot of time, but to
Hmm.
invest in my society or to invest in my community such that I have a community of people who support me specializing and they like genuinely value me specializing, but they also are gonna either specialize in their own things or just kind of like do their own things, and I just kind of
Hmm.
know they're gonna be there for me, and we're gonna like walk through life together so that we, um, I don't know, we're just like we're basically supporting each other.
Yeah.
It does that like one question is just if you're starting to imagine that, or you can kind of picture what that feels like if you were to take that on, would that resolve some of the stress, or is it is it actually really about you? It's like, oh, I specifically feel like I'm losing a bunch of skills.
I think that resolves uh I think that does resolve some of the stress. I think this kind of you mentioned something about okay, you're in this community and it's not just about you. It's like this you said like index fund. Like that
Mm-hmm.
idea of of it being less about you and doing having some kind of sacrifice for the community like that's honestly like a pretty new idea to me. Like I've started to come around to that, but I think most of my life it was mostly about how do I do this one thing well? Because if I do this, everything will be fine. Although,
Sure. No, I mean, it makes
admit,
sense. It's like we live in a
yeah.
very individualist sort of society, and especially like if you left to go to undergrad and you grew up in a different country, and then you like, there's a lot of choices that you're making that are sort of like, how do I continue to increase my uh, circumstances and my ability to provide for my family and like build a good life for myself and go to the right school and study the right things. It's like all those decisions are the correct decisions to make as a young person.
Mhm,
So I think that's all very wise. And also like at some point you mature and develop roots and specialize. And at that point you're making very different decisions. It's not like how can I look out into the environment and find the thing, like the next thing. Instead you're more like, oh, how do I invest? And things start becoming a lot more about investment and planting seeds and, reaping the harvest from some rooted thing that you've built rather than continuously. It's not like um, there will not always be more bigger opportunities for you to chase. At some point,
mhm,
you reach the end of the amount that you can like improve your station in life by just like going and searching for opportunities, and then
mhm.
at that point, you can only increase your circumstances by growing things,
Yeah.
rather than like moving.
Yeah, that takes longer though, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely it takes a lot longer. Um, and especially
Mhm,
when you live in like the modern era where circumstances and wealth is so there's so many niches, right? It's like you can improve your circumstances in a country like America so much by just moving around. Like if you just move to the right place, your circumstances and trajectory can be like wildly, wildly altered. Uh, and it's almost certainly for the vast majority of people a much faster strategy for
mhm.
like a general kind of wealth creation than to kind of build things for yourself. And also, you can sort of see how, in the abstract, if everyone took that strategy all the way to its extreme, you would kind of have a country of listless nomads with no roots and no sense of home. And like
Mhm.
almost like a Ponzi scheme or something, where like everyone is constantly moving around chasing opportunity and nobody is actually building any infrastructure or any wealth or planting any seeds. And so then it's almost like locusts or something. Like you have
Yeah.
people who are like running around chasing harvests. And you could either be like, well, that's in fact how opportunity is shaped in the world. Um, and like what we want is to create a kind of economy of people that are moving really fast through
Mhm,
ideas and like picking all of the low hanging fruit. And I think there's a theory there that's kind of interesting. But my instinct is in reality, what that produces is a kind of uh, race to the bottom that ultimately ends in some type of dissatisfaction. It's like uh,
mhm.
you get to the top pretty fast in terms of what you can actually do just by running around searching for opportunities. Anyway, this is rather abstract, but
No, no, it makes all sense in the world, and like something that just comes up with. So I grew up in Mexico, and I feel like most of my family there was the complete opposite of that. Like they were just all out on just like family orientation, like just
yeah,
complete sacrifice to a fault, to the point where like they weren't taking care of themselves.
right,
And like I grew up seeing a lot of that, where like these people were just kind of living lives that they didn't really enjoy, and like really not fixing problems that they probably had to fix, and it was just all for this like sacrifice for for their family that that although is very like heartfelt, it was a little too much. So maybe to me it was like maybe an overcompensation the other way, like, hey, I'm not going to do any of that because I've seen where it takes them. And then I think it couples also with like me moving to the US. I'm on a visa, right? And like kind of staying here in a way is kind of implicitly tied to performance, right?
right,
To
yeah, that makes
right,
sense.
like I have to be good to stay here. And so it's always on my mind, right? So kind of like letting go of that has been something that does feel like right, like, and now that I'm like a little more like secure in what I want and who I am, it feels like the right move to kind of let go of this hyper individualistic kind of perspective, but it still has its grip a little.
Yeah, I think of these as frames, right? So it's like uh, the goal here is to build a good life. There's this book on game development or game design that's really good, and it's just a book of frames. So basically, and they even turned the book into a deck of cards where every card is just like a frame that you can use to evaluate your game. And like one of the frames is like a frame of theme. And the questions that you ask when you're taking on this frame is you ask, well, what is the theme of my game? And how can I use every single tool at my disposal to maximize the theme, to enhance the theme. And then another frame might be like the frame of mechanics, and it's sort of like, oh well, what are the core mechanics of my game? What do they feel like? What are they made out of? What technology am I using to implement the mechanics? And then and so on. And there's like 100 frames or something. And what's fascinating about the book is that you quickly realize like, oh, I can tell that some games were developed primarily with one frame, or I can tell that some games were developed primarily with like these couple of frames. And because game design is such an art rather than a science, it's not like, and it's certainly not some sort of engineering practice. Um, you kind of have people who just they're figuring it out, and for them, some frames work extremely well, and so they just stick with them. And then you have other, whatever. But it's never a bad thing to just take on new frames. So anyway, my main point is just with respect to this hyper individualization versus community or whatever. Like, just obviously have a sobering outlook that looks at the costs and benefits and trade offs of each one. And um, I'm sure that what you've been doing has been making very sound decisions for yourself. If this other frame sounds very generative, definitely use it. And also, like, nothing wrong with the original frame. Um,
Hmm.
I think probably both of them are trying to guide you toward what is ultimately good. And it's just that there's so many different ways of seeing what's good that we have to swap between them in order to like get perspective um, on the life that we're building for ourselves. But okay, I just want to think a little bit more about this. Is this related to the explore exploit thing? So you're saying like going to events and going to parties and talking to people and stuff like that, versus continuing to uh, almost like invest in your work or invest in the work. How does that relate to your ideas of like, do I want to generalize and do more hobbies and stuff like that versus do I want to specialize in my lab? It feels like you're kind of at this crossroads where you sense that you have a lot of potential and that there's a lot of opportunity, but you're not exactly sure how to leverage it most. Is it all kind of the same thing, or are these discrete? Is there like another problem that's a different explore exploit thing that we should talk about?
I'm, hmm, I guess I'm not super clear on what exactly you meant there.
Like
Um,
when we started, this is just me trying to make sure I covered all my bases. When you started, you were saying I have some question about explore versus exploit. Can you just remind me what the issue there was?
yeah, so, um, for example, I'm working on a paper right now that I think is very interesting. It doesn't solve AGI, but it has some interesting ideas. Uh, but because it doesn't solve AGI, I'm
Okay.
like, fuck, maybe I should, this isn't exactly, it doesn't fit the current paradigm of like we're doing this thing with LLMs right now, so maybe I should
Right.
be focusing more of my energy there. But there's another part of me where it's like, well, if I constantly switch projects, right, I never have like one like nice thing to present, like, hey, this is what I did here, this is what I did here. Um, and and I think that kind of that also ties into the
Can you tell me a little bit about this paper? So, uh, why is it important? Like, what does it solve? It doesn't solve AGI. Like, does it solve any problem at all? What problem does it solve?
yeah. So basically, have you heard about like world models? So if you have a world model, which is basically like a representation of like, hey, if I take this action, how do I expect the world to change? And normally, when we're representing that is with a big neural net.
Mm-hmm.
And then what inevitably happens is you're running around life, and like your world model is different from what actually happens,
Yeah,
right? So
totally.
in the paper, I'm my world model is the dynamics for my robot, and the robot takes actions. It realizes, hey, this doesn't what I observed doesn't match what's actually
Yep, what
happening.
I expected.
Let's
Sure.
let's adapt real quick, and then like the key part is I'm taking. I'm driving the robot towards areas where like world
Where
model
it's experiencing confusion,
where it's experiencing confusion, but also
right?
where it won't maybe experience where it knows that adaptation is easier. So one way of thinking about it is okay, if I know that if I'm driving on really rocky terrain, it's going to be way harder to figure out what my world model is because it's just noisy, right? Like things
Right,
sliding
right, right,
around,
right.
like it may not even be necessary to really model that well.
I see. It's
Um,
almost like you want some conception of fields where progress is like where there's a lot of low hanging fruit, and then you want to like learn in those areas first, basically.
yeah, so I'm
Yeah,
all about like I'm really interested in this whole idea of like uncertainty, like quantifying uncertainty, and like
yeah. This
how
is like Bayesian updating, kind of. It's like, oh, you notice that your world model is wrong, so then you try to figure out which hypothesis generated the wrong world model and update the hypothesis, basically.
and drive and this is the key part that I'm like the vision kind of like where you have these big AI models that don't just say like, hey, I don't know this. They're like, hey, I don't know this, but this is an action I could take to figure it out. So I don't have an answer to your question right now, but I'm gonna ask other questions that'll kind of like tease out what the real
Totally.
answer is.
Sure.
And that's kind of what I'm after. And this is one instantiation of that for like one specific system. Um, but that's kind of something I'm
Do
interested
you
in.
think you can get there? Like, can you get to the answer of can you get to generaler and generaler cases, or maybe even instead of thinking of generaler and generaler or whatever, it's like, can you get to many different sub implementations of the question, like, hey, I don't have an answer to this question, but I do know how I can make progress on answering the question.
Yeah, so I think this paper is one of those, examples of this is one way where you could figure it out. And that's why it's like exciting. I guess it just sometimes it's frustrating when I'm working on it because I'm the only one and I just start going down
Yeah,
these
sure,
loops where I'm like,
sure.
like this does sound like it's in the it's directionally correct.
Yeah.
Uh, but maybe I assume too much about, and I don't know, you're on Twitter, you see these guys that are just founded 30 companies now are building AGI and also do like open source like work on the side and like, and then whatever, and it's like shit,
Have you ever talked to any of them?
I I have. Um I
Okay.
have
What
one
was
friend
your
who's really
impression in person versus on the internet?
that they're kind of regular people. Some of them aren't. Some of them aren't.
Right.
Like some of them are like really ultra specialized, but a lot of them just do seem just kind of like they have hopes and dreams and fears.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd say
yeah.
there's like, have you heard of the marketplace of ideas? Like, you know this concept, I'm sure. It's like you can think of
Well,
ideas. Ideas kind of compete in a marketplace where people spend attention on them. So there's like attention economics, and ideas compete for attention, kind of like products compete for dollars.
mhm,
And uh, and you can kind of use this as a bit of an intuition pump to start to figure out like, well, why do people care about some ideas and not others? It's like those
mhm,
ideas have some like idea market fit, kind of, in some attentional gap that is needed to be filled by an idea. And I think some amount of this angst that I'm hearing is like, it's some part, am I working on the right stuff? But it's actually just some part like, how do I market my ideas such that people really care about them and such that I'm getting more feedback? It's almost like you're working on these ideas in private, you're not getting very much feedback from the world. So you are yourself ironically struggling with the same side of problem that your AIs are struggling with, which is like, you want to be getting feedback from the world about whether your models are improving things and getting better, but you're kind of not getting the feedback you need because you're in some sort of rocky terrain and you need to move back to some type of terrain where you're getting very clear feedback. Uh,
mhm.
and I feel like probably you, even just taking on that frame, you have some ideas for how you could get an order of magnitude more feedback on your papers, but maybe you
Yeah.
don't.
No,
Also, would
I
that solve
have.
the problem?
Well, so I think so. I think that is the useful, like what you just mentioned is just on optimizing like directly for more feedback. Like I have done it, but I hadn't done it as consciously. Like for example, I've turns out you can just reach out to people and
Yeah,
cold email
yeah,
people.
literally every time.
So I reached out to this like super cool like really famous machine learning professor, and we had a quick chat. And that's actually how I'm collaborating with some people at DeepMind right now, just because I just reached out and was like, hey, I got these ideas. Um, it just feels like I always assume like, oh, they'll never take me seriously because I need to do more work before I reach out. That's proved not to be right so far.
Yeah, that's just like just totally wrong world model. Like for instance, if you imagine yourself being reached out to by somebody more junior than you, but who is in fact doing work in the space and has a hypothesis that you know how to evaluate. So it's not like completely nonsense. Like they've sent you some ideas, you know how to evaluate those ideas because they are in fact relevant to your research area. Like how do you respond to an email like that?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That it'll probably be like a good response, especially if I can tell that like they know they thought about it, you know?
Yeah. So it's like
Um,
no matter what, you're getting feedback here. Like you could realistically get feedback from the world and from other people that's sort of like, hey, your work isn't interesting enough right now, or your work isn't relevant to what I'm doing, or maybe even like they literally don't know how to evaluate what you're saying. So like you say something or you send them some ideas and they're like, I either don't have time or don't know how to evaluate this. I don't have the tools. Um, like any of those things are interesting pieces of feedback for you to get.
mhm.
But again, if somebody like who is a little bit more junior than you sent you stuff like that, but then later on they just kind of sent you another thing that you could evaluate, and you were like, "Oh, this is a really interesting idea, in fact, and I can understand it." Would the first email update you negatively on their stuff? Like, I I'm skeptical personally. Most of the time, it
Yeah.
wouldn't. Like maybe if they spammed me, or if they were being weird, or if it implied that they were psychotic, or like any of those things. But like that's completely different than somebody just sending me ideas that I don't know how to evaluate or that I don't think are relevant right now.
No, that's a good point. Hmm. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
In other words, there's basically no cost as long as you're earnest, seeking like literally an order of magnitude more feedback on all of your work, like 10 times the amount of feedback that you're getting now. There is no cost. People love giving feedback. People love being part of a learning process. And so you just explicitly going out there and being like, I have a really good idea. Please tear it to shreds to a bunch of people. Like they're gonna love that. Everyone loves that. Um, or like or like please tear it to shreds might not be the type of feedback you want. It's like, I have this really good idea. Like, can you use this? That's a question
Yeah.
that you can ask. Like, is it possible for you to use this idea to make progress? And then they might be like, no, the way that you've proposed this idea, I have no idea how to use it. Or, but getting feedback, exactly the feedback you want. In fact, yeah, it's not just possible. It's like probably straightforward. You probably have a good idea of how to do it.
No, yeah, I have ideas. And that's actually, yeah, I think the language tutor is just like an order of magnitude. Like, yeah, I can totally do that. It's not like it won't be an order of magnitude more expensive, you know.
No,
It'll be pretty easy.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and especially with the internet, like you might be able to get 3 or 4 orders of magnitude more feedback.
mhm.
It might not be the feedback you want at that scale, and or whatever, but like realistically, you probably have ideas even how to do that, uh, which which is separate from just the 1 order of magnitude.
Yeah, yeah, I think feedback is massive. I'm just getting better at it. I feel like I just maybe grew up in a place where you start off. I think I just heard this analogy in like a podcast with like Patio 11 and Kate Hall, where it's like
Yeah.
in certain societies where like you start with like 100 points and like you think like the only thing that happens is you lose is like status
Oh,
points,
right.
right? And then so then you avoid feedback at any cost, or you avoid any kind of negative feedback because you're like, this is only bad, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas in reality you can just use it to get better. um and that's been a big mind shift for me. So kind of this kind of that comment is like, yeah, I could just do that, and just even if it's negative feedback, even if they're like, hey, your ideas actually like suck, it's like, well, now I know.
Yeah, you could also think of it as like societies. Like if you do have the fear that some people are operating in this kind of like let's call this like zero sum or even negative sum, I guess. Like some people are operating in this sort of like negative sum status
Yeah.
society where there are like literally collections of researchers that trade status based on the idea that you are never wrong and you've never made a mistake as a researcher. How much do you trust those societies to do good science?
Yeah, no.
And do you even want to be part of those societies? Like, does that sound fun? Like, is that would you want your kids to be part of that society? Like, would you? Is that something that you want to support?
No, I mean
So
that's the whole reason.
if those
Yeah.
people rejected you, like they literally were just like, oh, Fernando is wrong sometimes, so like he's a pathetic bad scientist.
Hmm.
Like that would feel bad. I'm confident that would feel
Hmm.
bad. But like, would that ultimately be good for your career in the long run if you just like had to imagine like over the course of 50 or 60 years?
Yeah, probably because I just wouldn't.
Assuming you never gave up. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, like I just those wouldn't be my people, kind of, right? Like
Right.
I wasn't even gonna work with them well, anyways.
And so it's like, is it likely there is a society of people who are totally fine with being wrong as long as like what they actually care about is like improvement on ideas over time and admission of error. So it's sort of like if you're wrong, you admit it and then get better. Like, is there like an error correcting scientific society in AI?
I think so. I think, well, so far the interactions I've had with some researchers have been like that.
So
I've
I'm
made a lot
confident
of.
there is personally. Like almost literally every single AI researcher I know, including you, seems to be part of this like weird error correcting type of society that I think is somewhat rare historically, but within specifically the domain of AI research is like overwhelmingly the common trait where you basically just tell them an idea and they're like, oh, that's interesting. And then they immediately consider it. And they're kind of like, wait, no, it doesn't work because of this other idea that I have. And then you get into a debate with them and then like you resolve the thing. And then they're just like, thanks, that was awesome. Like I had a great time. That's
Mhm.
the AI researchers I talk to are all like that. So I think you're already in a good place if you want your ideas to be seriously considered by other people. And then I also think you're in a good place if you want your ideas being wrong to be considered cool as long as they like led to an interesting series of sub ideas.
Okay.
I think people already love all this stuff in AI, and I think you have the right intuition that sort of like you don't want to be part of this negative sum status society. Like that's not a good scientific society. It doesn't lead to good science. So even if the only act of rebellion you made against that, which by the way, I don't believe we live in that world. Like I don't think that's. I'm sure there are academics like that. In fact, I know that there are because I've met some of them. But like, uh, but that world can't last long. It's kind of like a bubble, and it tends to pop because you just can't go that long trying to have interesting ideas and having a 100% hit rate.
Well, you'd be surprised how long you can go in some academic settings if you just know how to play the meta, you know?
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, but you could try. It's just like
I can't. Like I just I
right.
that's yeah.
Realistically, the whether or not those are going to be the world historic papers, like
Yeah.
that seems very unlikely to me.
I
Um,
agree. I agree.
yeah, but you can probably like build a career out of it. I'm sure, but you can always build a career out of being meta in every situation. Um, okay. Anyway, so obviously, like knowing this stuff intellectually is different than feeling it. So
Hmm.
and then we're kind of running up on time
Hmm.
constraints. So I want to like try to cover loose ends that we've uncovered and wrap things
Hmm.
up a bit. So, to summarize again, is sort of like I would like to become a better researcher, is something like the core goal, it feels like.
Hmm.
And you're pretty
Hmm.
confident in that. It's not like you want to make a big career pivot to a different type of career.
No, no,
No. Okay.
this is super
Right.
I mean, it's super scary to say that, but
Right.
it's the most exciting thing I can
Yeah.
think of.
So it's like I want to become a better researcher and I want to crack robot AGI is like clearly part of your
Yeah.
goal. And then you have some intuitions that are like I kind of feel like currently my team structure and my project management structure is not optimized for that goal and it could be better. And then you also have some intuition like the way in which you are sharing your ideas with other people and participating in the scientific community is like not optimal and could be better. um, and also you're a little bit worried that you're going to become sidelined, like you're going to become irrelevant or your work is going to become irrelevant or something. And so you have this explore exploit uh,
Mhm.
like tension that's sort of like, oh, I really want to stay relevant, but also I'm kind of confused. If I just keep chasing relevancy, aren't I going to never make any progress on anything?
Mhm.
Which
Mhm.
is a correct tension, right?
Mhm.
So but then when you describe your paper, you seem to believe it's relevant.
Yeah. I
right?
think it is.
So like really what you need in order to have relevancy here is much more feedback on your existing ideas that you already have, which I would call exploit rather than explore. It's sort of like you just need to get a lot more feedback on the ideas that you think are good if you're already having good ideas. If you don't think you're having good ideas, that's a different question. And it's sort of like, well, maybe go back to explore a little bit. But um, obviously, you need to be an expert in something. You can't just like go chase the things that other people have expertise in because then you're not really contributing much. So
Hmm.
I think you have a good intuition there. I'm curious to zoom out. So it's like, here's kind of the summary. You have a magic wand. You have also $1 million to solve the problem, and it's 6 months from now, and you spent the $1 million however you wanted, and let's say it's like $1 million per year or something like that's your budget, and you have a magic wand. Like, how do you structure your lab? How do you structure your life? Like imagine a day in the future, 6 months from now, that you have the perfect setup to become the ML researcher who cracks robot AGI in a very substantial way, such that you make a major contribution, and then you're kind of continuously pushing that edge. You're obviously not the only one because you're part of some community, um, and in the sense that like you're going to have colleagues and you're going to be like working with them and stuff. But what does 6 months from now need to look like for you to get there?
Mm,
And imagine you have this budget and you have the magic wand.
yeah, I think I would use that budget to kind of pay for all the other grad students so they can just focus on this and be like,
Yeah.
hey, don't worry about those grants. Let's do one project or whatever project we're interested in, not just it doesn't have to
Mm,
be mine. Um, and and then that would be one part. The other part would be I'd we'd hire someone to make just cool like visualizations and just focus on like the presentation of all
yeah.
this
Present.
work.
Yeah. Sure.
So we don't have to worry as much about that because that just
Yeah.
takes up so much time, but
That's
it's
like the
so
Anthropic blog or whatever.
yeah, exactly. But it's so crucial because like nice graphics just make people want to read the
No, I
paper.
mean, obviously, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I get it.
Um, and then that's maybe spend some time or money on figuring out like optimal like project management. That's a great point you brought up, and that is something that can be problematic at times. Um, but yeah, that's what comes up when you say that.
And in terms of like your day, so like imagine a day. What does the day
Hmm.
look like? Like really good research day.
Like as in like my
Yeah,
routine
just like
to
visualize it. Like, okay, you wake up in the
eh,
morning, then what? It's
I wake
Monday.
up in the morning, I go work out, have some breakfast, then come over to the lab. I normally ride my bike in, and then just do like 9 to 6, 7, whatever I feel like,
Yeah. So
and
okay, you
then
arrive at the lab. It's like let's say it's 9 a.m.
yeah,
Okay, like what happens? Like what do you see? Who is there?
maybe I don't know what the optimal would be here, but maybe have some like kind of check in with everyone, like, hey,
Okay,
what
so
did
you
we do
walk in and like
yesterday?
the other people are already there
Yeah,
at 9, basically. So like everyone's kind of arriving at 9 ish, something like that.
yeah,
Who or like in your ideal world, like everyone works harder than you, right? So it's like, oh, everyone's already working, and then you kind of show up and you're like, what are you guys
yeah.
working on? And then yeah, you guys are discussing kind of like how to move the research forward. You're checking in, but checking in on what? Like what's everyone working toward? What are you driving toward?
Yeah, like maybe a reminder of like, hey, this is the let's say we're working on a single paper. It's like, hey, this is the paper. This is the idea we're
Okay.
interested in.
Yeah, you got like a
Uh,
sign on the wall that's like,
yeah,
this is the North Star. What's the North Star?
the North
Robot
Star is
AGI.
yeah, the North Star in this case maybe is like, how do you like how do you do online adaptation of the weights? Like
Yeah,
that's for in a robot, right? And
sure.
then maybe there's a couple like areas. There's maybe some people that are going to be in charge of like the robot because that's a whole thing. And then there's another part of people that are maybe interested in like the theoretical foundations. And then it's like, okay, what does each team have done so far? Like where are the roadblocks? And where like
Okay, so
is
you
what
have a sign on
yeah.
the wall. You have a whiteboard on the wall. On the wall is sort of like robot AGI, and then like branching immediately down from robot AGI is like your lab's piece of that, which is sort of like online updating of
Hmm.
weights in
Hmm.
robots. And then from there, you kind of branch off into your teams or whatever. And then you're
Hmm.
going through each team and you're discussing blockers to the goal. So basically, like
Yeah.
everyone agrees on the goal. You're reminding everyone of the North Star, and then you're sort of like, okay, let's just figure out like where are we stuck. What could we be doing to drive more progress? Is like, are we going in the wrong direction? You're trying to figure out
Hmm.
if you're running into dead ends, that sort of thing. And
Hmm.
then that, let's say a couple teams have some blockers and are sort of stuck on, yeah, I don't know, deployment or whatever. Then your goal is just, I don't know, get them unblocked, like put them in touch with a colleague. Are you like collaborating with other research labs that they can talk to? Like what do you do to kind of unblock each other?
I mean, I guess first step is, explain what they've tried and what hasn't worked, and like maybe some hypothesis on why they think it doesn't work. Like, hey, I think this is what breaks, and then maybe, I don't know, brainstorm like experiments that like test that specific hypothesis that figure out if that's actually it.
Sure. Okay, and then
Um,
and then the goal is like by doing this process every day together as a team, uh, and like focusing on the North Star and getting better. The goal is like all these researchers are going to be getting better together. Uh, so then, so let's say that meeting happens and everyone's feeling good and energized, and like everyone's going to be able to get to work. So now it's like 9:30, everyone's working. Uh, then what? It's basically like, would you work in a solid chunk until lunch, basically, just on your work?
yeah, I'm a big fan of that because I feel like
And are you
unless it
imagining your
needs.
work as more collaborative? Like in the ideal world, is your work more collaborative? Or are you like headphones on, like you're pretty locked in the morning?
I think it depends now at this point. Like like if we're still in like a brainstorming phase where like what exactly we're trying, like yeah, we 100% we need to be in a meeting room together. But if we're just literally just figuring out how to implement something that we already have all the math for, and it's just a matter of just putting heads down, then it's like no meetings, just work. Um, mhm.
And then, okay, so let's say, yeah, like lunch happens. You doing lunch with the team? Is that important to you in your ideal world?
I think that'd be fun. That'd be fun. Yeah.
Okay, so some days you do lunch with the team. Maybe some days people do lunch individually.
Hmm.
Um, and then one thing I haven't heard so far, so I've heard a lot of work with respect to like marketing of the work, feedback, distribution. Like, where does that fit in like an ideal day? Imagine this is one of the days where you're doing that.
I think that would fit into like when we think about what we're doing, a lot of it is okay, what experiments we're running, and those are going to be motivated in part by marketing and distribution because there's some experiments that are better at showing off what's actually going on than others, right? So, um, I
But like,
think.
what's your general strategy? Like in terms of just like before, where we're talking about like the strategy to achieve AGI. There's like some strategy to get feedback on your ideas. What's like the North Star there? How are you thinking about that?
mm, what's my strategy for feedback? Well, I want something that like an experiment that very quickly gives people intuition as to what's happening, right? Like it's not just like this
Of course,
fixes.
there's feedback at the technical level, which like I mostly trust the work to handle. I actually just mean on social, like social, political, all this stuff that you're talking about there's all these other research labs that seem to be making a lot of progress. Um, how does your research lab become one of those? Because it's not enough to just do the research, right? Realistically, like you said, you
Hmm.
care about presentation and marketing, and it's not enough to just have like a blog with a bunch of charts. I imagine there is
Hmm.
literally an element of going and talking to people about your research that
Yeah, like
is going to
sending
become
sending
pretty
the work
important.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for example, the current paper I'm working on, I have a list of people that when it's done, I'm just going to send it to them and be like, hey, this might be relevant to you. Um, but maybe brainstorm. Yeah, that could be useful. I
And one of the things I'm kind of implying here is that I think in San Francisco, like you're in Austin, I'm sure
yeah.
there's some amount of AI research in Austin, but in San Francisco, there's obviously a huge amount of it. I don't believe that there's any distinction between a before and an after a paper gets published in terms of how often AI researchers are discussing those ideas with each other. I think there's a never-ending discussion when I visit San
Okay.
Francisco or when I talk to my AI researcher friends. Like it doesn't stop. There's just a like, wow, we're constantly discussing ideas and we're constantly getting feedback on ideas before the paper's published, after the paper's published. After the paper's published is when you want like formal feedback in the sense that, hey, here's our like final, go at this problem. But
Mhm.
uh, if that's the first time that you've gotten any feedback on the like core ideas or any like interesting outside feedback, one of the
Mhm.
thoughts I have is like it will be hard for you to compete with San Francisco or to compete with
Hmm.
like the sort of progress that's able to be made in a culture like that, where people are constantly showing up to the same parties and like discussing their ideas in advance of publishing and stuff like that. But maybe that's not
Okay.
true. That's just an intuition I have from far away.
No, that's a good point. Just it's just more feedback, like it's more feedback in general, so more
Right.
opportunities to correct, right?
And my instinct is like realistically, uh, that sort of thing can be pretty distracting from like coding, of course.
Hmm.
I've been a software engineer. Like meetings are hard to put into the same calendar as coding. But I also have some instinct that like that is how you develop these research. I mean, it's like you said with the DeepMind thing. It's like it. I have a friend who part of his process and kind of what I'm hinting at, but like I don't want to give you like a prescription because for each person it's going to be
Hmm.
different. But part of his process for his career, just in general, is he sends one cold email per day, every day of his life. Just like he doesn't ever go a day without sending a cold email. And it's because like you don't know when somebody's going to say yes and when they're going to respond is part of it. And then the other thing is sort of like uh it's a naturally unusual thing to do, and most people have like biases against doing it that you're going to rationalize. So you're going to like make some sort of rationalization that's like, oh, but people
Hmm.
don't really want to hear my ideas until the paper's published. That's an
Yeah.
insane thought, like actually an insane thought to me. To me, I only want to hear your ideas before the paper's published because I have an ego, and so like I want to help you get my I want to get my ideas into your paper, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if I only hear about it after the paper's published, I'm like, oh, like I don't even want to talk about it, like you already published that paper, that's boring.
yeah.
Like I want to go talk to somebody who hasn't published their paper yet. And then so like there's almost an inverse thing that's like, oh, people will probably want to hear about the ideas even more before the paper's published. And
Wait,
obviously like
wait.
whatever. But
Let me double. So he sends a cool email, but what are they about? Are they like
it's about his
work
career.
related?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's career related every day. So for him, he's in politics rather than in ML. But like it would be the same as if he's in ML. I mean, it's really no. It's not like he's running for office. So the cold email is like to a constituent or something. It's basically
Yeah.
like he will send a cold email to somebody that he think could be his mentor or somebody that he thinks could advance his work every
Hmm.
day, and he'll basically share with them his work, his progress on that work, and make some request or ask some question or whatever. And
Hmm.
um and like whatever he really genuinely believes that that person could help him with. So it's almost like having a ritual of asking for unusual help every single day, and then he gets it a lot, and he ends up having insanely cool conversations because of it. And then over time, that
Yeah.
I mean, you develop a sort of like you develop a reputation for being social and kind of for being like somebody who is at the
Hmm.
center of a network of people. And then you also, by doing that, you get a broad view of the field, and you can start to connect different ideas in the field, not just for the sake of your own research, but like when somebody comes to you who is more junior, you say you have all these people skills that you want to use. It's like, well, here's a great place to use them. You can connect that person with the right researcher, or you can connect that
Hmm.
person with the right lab. Um, if those two should meet, if that would be like good for the world somehow.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I can think of a lot of parallels. Yeah.
Right. And then, and there's a lot of historical examples of this uh, in math as well. So I forget what was the guy's name. I feel like
Is it
Descartes did
Erdos?
this. I feel like Erdos also might have done this, but I also feel like Descartes might have done this for some reason.
I don't know
But
about.
anyway, there are a lot of people historically who were at the center of a bunch of mathematicians, and like the mathematicians would all send their work to that person, and that person would like go distribute it to everyone else, where it
Oh,
would be interesting to their ideas. And so in that
yeah.
sense, like these kind of networks form, and that was before the internet. Like it literally required you to write letters to people, and
Hmm.
so you can imagine these mathematicians like they're working on math, which is what they want to do every day, and then they have to go pen letters. Like they have to go work on their math on the one hand, and then they have to go transcribe the math over and over and over again in a bunch of letters, and they have to like fold up their proofs, and they have to rewrite them by hand and then put them in send
Yeah.
them off to a bunch of different people. It's like that's horrible. but uh but in our case, like all we have to do is write emails. I mean, we have copy paste. So
And you see, that's exactly the kind of stuff that I am good at already. Like
yeah,
I've a bunch of my collaborators right now are just people I reached out and like
nice.
they connected
That's
me to
great.
someone like, but I just hadn't thought of like keeping it like if of pushing it further, right? Because it just feels like something I kind of do automatically. So I didn't think it's like something I should do more, right? But it's such a great point, and it was like, wow, like I just hadn't really thought that um I could just keep pushing that and take it even bigger, like an order of magnitude bigger.
Yeah, and then I think you should do it. I think you should play with it and be like, what happens?
Hmm.
Then this kind of brings us all the way back to the original
Hmm.
sort of problem, which is like, okay, you don't have $1 million in the real world, obviously, and that's kind of sad. Uh, what is like the cheapest? So now imagine that like you kind of have a magic wand in the sense that you have unlimited courage. You've drunken bottled courage. You are going to, and you will execute on any plan that you invent here. Um, what is realistically going to get you to all this progress that you want? Given that you can't just get $1 million a year for free, like who do you need to ask? What help do you need to ask for? Who could you reach out to? Like what sort of structure could you make to get to this place in 6 months?
I think the
Anyway,
first person would just be my advisor, right?
mm,
Just be like, hey, like this is a way in which I see the lab maybe working better together. Um, that's definitely the first point of contact. And it's also like it's really funny because I have all these skills that I've worked on that I'm like really good at, but then you always run into people where like you throw all your skills out the window. Kind of, I think similar things happen with like family, right? Like you
yeah,
work
yeah,
on yourself and then you go back for holidays and
yeah, yeah. That's so true.
it just goes all out the window. Anyways, I think yeah, I have some old habits around my advisor. Like I'm not going to say anything because I can't be wrong.
mm. Yeah, like what if you considered yourself to be a peer to your advisor? Like it could be that would there's like two ways that could go. One way is in which like the advisor would consider that offensive. Another way is which
Hmm.
in which the advisor would be very pleasantly surprised and would just be like, "Oh, that's great. Like now we can start working on another level together."
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think he would be receptive. I think he would. He's great. Yeah, that's the first step. That would be the first step that comes to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, so you'd like write some sort of memo. It's like, "Okay,
Yeah, it'd be like yeah, you kind of
here's the
yeah,
plan."
put my thoughts down and like yeah.
And what
And
do you think that
also
memo would look like? Like if you had to draft the kind of subheadings of a memo to your advisor, what what are you focusing on?
well, first maybe describe like the situation, like we're um
Maybe describe the opportunity.
yeah, the opportunity would be
It's like what's
just
your
to
goal here? Like your goal is like we want to solve like our lab is capable of solving robot AGI. Like you believe this, presumably. Um and you're like that's fucking crazy, but like I actually really believe it.
hmm.
And so the opportunity is like our lab is the lab that solves this big problem.
Hmm.
Um I think that I mean I assume your advisor would be like, "Okay, hell yeah. Like if you really believe that, that's a big deal." Your advisor might not believe it, in which case
Hmm.
you'd have to defend the claim a little bit. But then I think you could get into the problems. But like, I wouldn't lead with the problems.
Hmm. Oh, okay, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, because then I just come out with my arms swinging like, "Hey, you're doing this wrong, this
Right,
wrong."
exactly. Like, what's the yeah? What are you like? Okay, everyone's a critic. What
Yeah.
you're actually saying is sort of like, hey, I have a plan to solve robot AGI. Like, I have a plan to
Hmm.
like make serious progress on one of the goals of the lab. Um, Here is what I need to accomplish the plan. In fact, I literally wouldn't even frame anything as a problem. It's sort of like,
Hmm.
and you even said this to me earlier. It's like, oh, I love the lab. Like I love the lab. I love my
Hmm.
advisor. Like it's great. Sort of like you believe it could be better. The plan is just like, hey, I have a plan to make things better. Here's what I need to make things better. Um, Ideally, that's not money. Ideally it's stuff that's just like it might be money. It's just your advisor might not be able to give you that. So you might just need to be like, what I actually need is like I just need your thoughts. Like I need feedback.
Hmm.
Um, I need like kind of a thought partner on this stuff for a little while I think about this. And this is kind of like a hypothesis that I have that I'm
Hmm.
curious to like run experiments on and test. And I just wanted to hear what you're thinking about it. Does that make sense? Like, does that sound like it would work? Okay. That's pretty nice. If that is the relationship that you have with your advisor moving forward, where you're kind of like able to propose serious improvements to the lab and then just discuss them as peers and be like, oh, hey, here are some of the thoughts that I have. Here's what we should do moving forward. Here's my kind of plan to implement that. So you don't have to do it. Like I'm going to do it, so that there's
Hmm.
no extra work being put on your plate. Um, do you feel like that would satisfy some of the, like, would that, does that satisfy some of the feelings that you came into the call with at the very beginning of like, oh, I'm feeling kind of stuck? Or do you still feel like, even with that change, you're
Hmm.
feeling stuck?
Um, I think it would. I think it would if I framed it like in the yeah if I frame it in like, hey, let's make this more collaborative. I th- um I think it would make me feel better on that front. On the Because then and here I'm just extrapolating. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I feel like maybe in the case where like there's an emphasis on like, hey, let's make this all more collaborative. I maybe would also stop worrying as much about myself, like individually. Like it has to be perfect in the way I see it, right? Um, and maybe some of those worries regarding like s- specialization versus staying general, like that would feel a little better. Hmm.
Right, because now you're like part of some broader team. Like you can trust that everyone else is trying to get to robot AGI as well. So there's some amount of like, okay, well, if I can trust that everyone is actually genuinely working on robot AGI and we can talk about that and we can kind of like critique each other on whether or not we're making progress toward the goal, then you're kind of a more firm believer in specialization being valuable to that project, I guess is
Hmm.
what you're saying.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, okay, cool. Uh, I think we should stop roughly around here because there's kind of like a lot of different stuff that we've unpacked. Obviously, there's like an unlimited amount of
Of
ways to
course. Yeah.
take a career, and but I'm curious, like, okay, if we stopped here, what's the what's left? Like, what's left that you're thinking about or that you're pondering,
What is left?
or just what comes up? What's left almost implies that there's a problem. I don't necessarily want to imply that. I just mean like, if we took 30 seconds of silence, which maybe we should do now, I will time it. I'll check in with you in 30 seconds. Okay. Yeah, just like, what are you feeling?
I feel a little like fear slash excitement of like, hey, like I know what I have to do. It's just like scary. Like that whole thing about like, okay, what would
Yeah.
I do? Like actually being an AI researcher that's trying to solve AGI, like that sounds so exciting, but it's also sounding so scary. Like, oh shit, kind of just, kind of dropping into that, into doing all the steps to get to that. Um, because maybe it's just a life that I just don't know exactly how it looks like, and it maybe not what I planned like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. No, that's great. So, what, hold on to that. Do you journal? Like, do you have a journal that you write things in?
yeah, yeah,
If you have time, what I would do is I would just immediately after this just journal at least for 5 minutes. That
yeah.
is
Okay,
like, you should start with like, what if I solved AGI? Or like, what if I was like
okay.
working to solve AGI or whatever? Um, because obviously I don't have the answers. Like, that is an insanely large change in
Hmm.
your self-conception or in like what you want to do with your life, and it does have a lot of implications, and it's something that we don't have time to get into.
Hmm.
And even if we did, like, I'm not well equipped to work that out with you. Like, that's something you should probably work out in a journal, literally first,
Yeah. Okay.
um and then work out. But I think that's about right. I think it's like, okay, we kind of, the way I see it is like we kind of like roamed around in the forest and like dug a bunch of shit up and like threw it out,
Hmm.
and now it's very
Hmm.
disorganized. And maybe taking some time to just reorganize the thoughts. and figure out like, oh, did we just make up a random direction? Like you could imagine a totally different life where you uh double down on like having like a calm, stable, enjoyable relationship with your work and like working on kind of subfield problems, and then you pick back up cycling, and then you're kind of just
Hmm.
like biking all day and doing
Hmm.
research. It's like there are
Yeah.
completely different lives available to you here, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, and just drilling on that sounds fairly lucrative. Cool, dude.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
anything
thank
else?
you. No, thank you so much, Andrew. This was wonderful. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. Hopefully something in here sticks. Feel free to DM me afterwards if anything does. That would be really good feedback for me. This is
Okay.
definitely like a fun experiment where it's like, oh, how much can you unpack if you have like almost no context in somebody's life?
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, wish you the best of luck, dude. Your work sounds
Yeah.
really, really cool, honestly, and
Thank you.
I hope you keep working on it if you enjoy it. Sounds fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I will. I'll keep you updated. Also, is this like going on a podcast?
Yeah, this is going on like some sort of podcast. Is that chill with you?
Yeah, that's fine. I was just
Okay,
curious.
perfect. Yeah, I'll
All
send it to
right.
you when it's published. It should be published probably by Friday, something like that.
Oh, okay. Wow. Soon. All right. Well,
Cool.
thank you so much, Andrew,
Yep.
and we'll stay in touch. Bye bye.
Take care, man. Bye.